I bid you welcome.
I welcome you to my house.
Welcome to my house.
Welcome to my home.
Hello Horror Hounds, welcome to my horror house and welcome back to the year of James Herbert. We're going through his books in order. This episode much delayed thanks to wanky COVID, but we're on book 3, The Survivor, which I would say, if you want my cliff notes for it, shows very much a writer looking to stretch his muscles, broaden his ability, broaden his scope after the first 2 novels. And for me personally, kind of missing the bullseye, but you can see the promise in this, and you can see how he is definitely going to evolve into more than just a splatter or shock horror author, which you might have imagined from The Rats and then The Fog as the follow-up. The Survivor deals with a plane crash in Eton where 300 people are killed, and one man, Keller, the co-pilot, walks unscathed from the wreckage with no memory of what happens. And what we set about on here is a kind of dual narrative. There's Keller trying to work out what's happened and is almost literally haunted by his inability to remember. And then the goings on, the supernatural goings on in the town, because the souls of the people who died in the crash can't lay to rest, and they want revenge on the person who caused the plane to drop from the sky. And those two narrative threads, as you might imagine, do merge. So after his first 2 books, which I would describe as sort of widescreen James Herbert, The Rats, his first book, sees disaster, a sort of nature attacks disaster overtaking the whole of London with huge set pieces. He goes even larger with The Fog. That threat is roaming around, I guess, the whole of the southeast of England, and again even bigger and larger set pieces. Here Herbert really tries to narrow his focus down. I think you can definitely see him trying to get more into the mind of his main character, actually having his main character be more of a character. He's still bringing some of his old tricks to bear, as he will continue to do throughout his career, and why not? They're great tools to use. The little vignette sort of standalone sequences is what he employs anytime we jump from Keller's story back to the town, back to Eton, to see what's going on and sort of the hauntings and the deaths that are occurring there tends to be his kind of little vignette. Here's a character, here's their history, here's their backstory. Let's watch them come a cropper through, in this case, supernatural forces. One of the things he does here, which I find interesting, is he doesn't always kill those people off at the end of the vignettes, as he had done previously in The Fog and The Rats. Sometimes he'll bring them back. He seems to be trying to weave a more complex narrative than he has in his first 2 books, which is absolutely to be commended. What he's trying to do with the Keller storyline also is set up a mystery. Some of his chapters he now ends on cliffhangers to pull you through, to keep you reading, which he hadn't done in his first 2 novels. Again, this is someone really starting to exercise their powers as a storyteller, and there is a mystery at the heart of it which pulls you through, which there really wasn't in his first 2 novels. So all of these signs of someone trying to develop, evolve as a writer, get better as a writer, and probably it's fair to say the writing in this is better than his first 2 novels. I just think the elements he's got don't satisfyingly coalesce for me at the end. Now, this is something that he will nail later on in his career, but here for this first attempt to try something different, it doesn't all quite resolve too wonderfully. We have, with Keller's investigation, sort of the reveal very close to the end of the book of it was me. I was responsible for bringing the plane down. What we've got going on here with the spirits is kind of muddled. Some of them have sort of moved on. Some of them are trapped here. Some of them, because it turns out that one of the passengers in the plane was a despicable old fucking Nazi. James Herbert will have a lot of despicable old fucking Nazi characters in his oeuvre, and why not? If you want to have a villain, make them a racist piece of shit Nazi. But it turns out that one of the spirits is one of these characters, and he actually kind of likes the sway he holds over some of these souls and wants to keep them here and use them as tools for his particular brand of evil and kill people and whatnot. So you have sort of two layers of villain going on. Ne'er the twain shall meet. Keller really has nothing to do with the supernatural villain. Once we get to the culmination of things, that side of that sort of never gets resolved, and this one sort of gets resolved in the last sort of chapter with a lot of exposition in a room of this is why I did it and blah 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 blah. Big revelation at the end. What I find very interesting about The Survivor is how even though this has itself been adapted into a movie, not a particularly successful movie, starring Robert Powell and Jenny Agutter, there are elements from this story which I guess to a 21st century eye will sort of be cliche, but at the time really would have been wildly original, and how little bits of it have been magpied in other films, notably the works of M. Night Shyamalan. So we're going to go into spoiler territory here, but we have this idea of a big disaster with one lone survivor walking out unscathed. We see that in Unbreakable. The plane crash near a church in an English town where one person walks out unscathed is absolutely the middle section of Tom Cruise's The Mummy. I remember watching that in the cinema and thinking, they're riffing on James Herbert's The Survivor of all things. Then they went on to riff on Life Force, and then that movie goes on to riff on American Werewolf in London. So that it's, as much as I enjoy it, it's all over the place. But yeah, there's a little bit of James Herbert's The Survivor, quite a significant bit of James Herbert's The Survivor in Tom Cruise's The Mummy. More importantly still, the final reveal, the revelation of the mystery of how Keller survived, being that he didn't survive. He is the avatar of the 300 souls remaining in the physical world to interact with it, to try and find and bring to justice the man that caused all of their deaths. It's the Sixth Sense ending. It's the he was dead all along ending, which we all went nuts for during the Shyamalan movie, and Herbert had done it so many years previously. And I'm not suggesting he's the first person to have ever come up with the I was dead all along ending. I just find it interesting that M. Night he's either magpied a couple of significant bits from this one novel for two of his movies, or it's a wild coincidence, which it could quite easily be. So whilst this didn't absolutely hit the bullseye for me, I'm really impressed with the improvement and the growth he's showing book on book, and his absolute willingness to develop as a writer, which he is going to take to the nth degree with his next novel, the absolute outlier of his entire oeuvre, which will be Fluke. One of the passengers in the plane was a despicable old fucking Nazi.